We're going to bring on Michelle Ryder, who is the Senior Manager of Human Resources Transformation Consulting Practice at Deloitte. She has graciously offered to share some key insights from the 2017 Human Capital Report, which is an important and influential publication really stimulating corporate discussion of new working realities, from the perspective of not only what employees need to be successful within their environment, but what organizations need to think about as they start to prepare their own offices of the future. She's a certified coach with considerable cross-sector experience and experience within the private sector across many industries. Michelle, we're very pleased to have you. Welcome.
So thank you very much for having me today. It's my pleasure to speak with you. I am very happy to be talking about rewriting the rules for the digital age. So first question may be is, why do we need to rewrite rules? And what is a digital age? So this is what we're going to talk about today. A lot of our trends you will see on the report and the top 10 are new this year. So new relating to really what is happening around digital. So we'll focus a little bit in on some of those trends. There are 10 that we're going to just give a little overview of. But in addition to that, we do have the report that's a full report that gives great company examples, more insight on the Deloitte website. So please feel free to access that. It's organized in a way that you can just focus in on a trend that you're interested in as opposed to reading the whole 180-page report. So we'll move into the presentation. So just a little bit of background of what we're seeing is happening. So this shouldn't be a surprise. Business productivity is increasing over time, but as we're seeing, the gap in the business performance potential is widening due to technology change. All right. So looking at that, we can look at factors such as mobile, sensors, AIs coming into play. A lot of data is what we're looking at. Access to technology by consumers globally is increasing, right? I expect if I asked you to put up your hand if you have some sort of mobile device or some sort of technology device that you use at home, I'm going to guess nearly everybody would put up their hand. So more and more technology is infiltrating our home life, but again, from a workplace perspective, it's also infiltrating our work life at a really, really increasing pace. So if we look at, next slide, perfect. So what is also happening here is public policy is not keeping up. So what we're seeing is public policy over time is growing and changing, but really not at the rate that can affect business and individuals effectively. So the gap that this survey really looks at is the opportunity between business and individuals. So the survey that we've done last year had 10,000 respondents in over 140 countries. So this is a global survey. 2 weeks ago, we just released 2018 survey to be completed. So early next spring, we'll have the results of those, of what's happening. So these new rules really reflect the shift in mindset, behavior, and actions required to lead, organize, and motivate, manage, and engage the 21st century workforce. There we go. So, without further ado, the 10 the trends that came up in order of importance are listed here. So we're going to overview each of those trends. I'll give you a little insight. We'll get into them in a little more detail, and I know we have about 30 minutes, so there'll be some time for questions too. But just to give you a little bit of an overview of each one of them so that you can understand what that trend might mean and what impact it might have on your organization. So if we look at organization of the future, for a long time we've been talking about it, so it's here. Yet companies feel that they're just utterly unprepared for what that means. CEOs and CHROs are struggling to reorganize around automation and employee-centric design. So we're seeing more and more automation, more and more demand to be agile, and more digital business models. So more and more technology, again, is infiltrating how processes are done, how organizations operate. If we look at careers and learning, career models in most organizations, what we're hearing is they're broken. So they're not keeping up with the pace of the demand of what employees are looking for. So we can even carve out specifically, if you want to even talk about millennials or new grads, what their expectations are for career and learning is leaps and bounds above what organizations are prepared to offer. So if we look at talent acquisition, this is another area where automation is coming. We would actually say it's here, and this is really, really tied to analytics. So looking at, where in the world can we get the best talent? How can we remove bias in our recruiting? Right? These are the kind of things that organizations are looking at from a talent acquisition perspective, and also from a technology perspective. There are more and more offerings out there that can assist, again, in some of that predictive analysis that allows organizations to go out into the world and find the best candidates, find pools of talent that may not be readily available in our local areas. This is forcing, again, HR to act faster, act smarter, get up to speed with what's going on in the organization from a digital perspective. Employee experience, again, you can see that area has been in our trends throughout the years, but it's changed more from employee engagement now to the overall employee experience. And Sophia mentioned a great, great description of the work environment here. When you talk about open and collaborative spaces, when you talk about opportunities to network within your organization, access information, work in an environment that's good for your day. These are the kind of things that we see from an employee experience perspective that are imperative. They're not something that you need to plan for in the future. They're something you need to figure out now. Okay, and if we move on into performance management, again, an area that has been in the trends in the past 5 years. The trend we're seeing, though, with performance management is that most organizations are reporting that they have revamped their performance management in the last 2 years. So by show of hands, how many organizations here have done something different to their performance management system in the last 2 years? So a good amount. How many has involved a major technical implementation with relation to that change? So a platform to be able to manage that. Okay, less hands. So this is where we're seeing the gap, again, in terms of a trend in performance management. So organizations are saying, we don't want to do performance management just once a year or just twice a year. No, we want to be nimble. We want to do performance management on the spot. We want to be able to have teams collaborate with some sort of tool to work towards common goals. So these are the types of things we're seeing emerging in performance management. Again, leadership, not a surprise that it's one of the trends. But the challenge here now is developing leaders who can, again, lead in a digital workplace. So understanding that, you may be managing not just humans, but you may be managing robots in the future. How do we lead humans and robots together? So these are some of the challenges, again, and trends we're seeing with relational leadership. Digital HR. So again, I mentioned a little bit of this around talent acquisition, but we're seeing more and more HR teams having to think about tools that will help employees collaborate and again, have a better employee experience. So HR has, from probably the past, let's say, I'll say 10 years, has been focused on cloud, getting their systems up to cloud implementations. Many of your organizations have probably, again, in the last 10 years, gone through some sort of transition from an on-premise HR system to some sort of cloud system. Digital HR now is a trend we're seeing moving more into areas that offer solutions around, again, automation, offering solutions, easy things at people's fingertips, mobile offerings, offerings where people can access HR information or their employee information from home or from anywhere easily to be able to, again, enhance their employee experience. And from the business perspective, businesses are looking for HR to provide some of those solutions, insights, apps to employees to help them be more productive. So businesses are looking for that type of advice. If we get into people analytics, again, this is very important as well. A newer, more emerging trend we're seeing is that people analytics are being seen more and more important in organizations, more impactful. So again, there's many technology tools that can provide a lot of analysis that used to be performed by people. So we're seeing that trend where organizations are investing in these tools. And again, we're going to get into the next one is the augmented workforce, where we're seeing more and more, again, related to people analytics, robotics and cognitive computing doing the work of humans, so that humans can, again, focus on those skills and those offerings that can't be done by robots, such as compassion, such as understanding of people's needs when they're talking to them, for perhaps in a sales type example. So diversity and inclusion, again, this is one that is woven into all aspects of the talent life cycle. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's no longer good enough to have on your website, we're an equal opportunity employer. That used to be the thing that, it used to be that HR departments had, diversity and inclusion as their goal. Now more and more we're seeing it as an organizational goal held by a CEO, and that individual or that type of shift is showing us that this, again, is becoming a more and more important trend. I mentioned briefly robotics, but in relation to that is really the augmented workforce. And this trend, again, is related as well to robots, AI, but it's also related to things such as crowdsourcing. So going out to find people to do work that aren't in traditional means. So the other one is having a more contract workforce. So when we say augmented workforce, you look at your traditional workforce of full-time employees, some contract help. We're seeing more and more of a shift away from that and more into having work done by the best resource so that the organization can focus on their core competencies. So, for example, it used to be kind of outsourcing, right? So a lot of organizations outsource certain tasks. Now, in addition to outsourcing those tasks to an organization, like I said, they're putting things out on the open market to say, who can do this piece of work. All right. So that's just a brief overview. I'm going to get into them in a little more detail. The trends are related. Obviously, if you look, there's common themes. You can't really talk about one without relating it to other ones. So there are relationships here between, for example, performance and diversity. And the question we're looking at is, how do we build a new management system to empower and engage teams, right? So we know organizations that have diverse teams are more productive and more profitable than organizations that don't. So, how can we look at these trends and translate them into goals and objectives of our organizations? It's easy to get overwhelmed by looking at all 10 and thinking, oh my gosh, I got to go away from here and I've got to do something on every one of these trends. That is not the idea. We come out with the top 10. They usually relate to organizations and what organizations are asking us around what they're seeing, right? So we have clients come and they're seeing these type of changes in their organization. They're seeing people adopt technology at a very fast pace. They're seeing their own technology grow and technology develop itself almost throughout the cycle. So again, all of these trends are related in some way. So I'm going to get into each of them, not all of them in full detail. There's a lot of stats here, but just kind of pointing out a couple things. I'll focus a little more in on employee experience and the diversity inclusion trend. But just looking again, as I mentioned, that organization of the future really is here. So 88% of the respondents felt this is very important. Again, 73% are experimenting with those collaboration tools. So Facebook at Work, Slack, those type of applications that organizations are supporting for employees to use within their workplace. But 8% really say that they're using some sort of organizational network analysis. So are we looking at the benefits of offering those tools? So again, we're seeing the trend towards offering them, but are we getting the results that we're hoping to get out of providing those tools? Does anyone in the room, does anyone offer something like a Facebook at Work or a Slack within their organization? We're starting to see that? Great. Okay. So again, this is what we're seeing in terms of that workplace, the future. So the challenges here that are coming up for, for CEOs and organizations are around really how do we organize our work in very meaningful ways for people when the shift or the change is happening so quickly. So what do new jobs look like in the future, right? What types of environments can we provide to our employees to keep up with the pace of change? Okay, careers, as I mentioned, again, this is where more and more, again, employees are looking for that continuous learning within their organization. So we're seeing more and more no longer a structured career path. I don't know if you remember, maybe back again 5 years or so even, most organizations had some career path that said, if you come in here, we're going to show you where you can go within the organization. That is really we're seeing less and less of that, and a trend towards a lot of organizations saying, you know what, you make your own career path. We'll provide you learning opportunities. We'll provide you learning platforms that will allow you to learn on the spot when you need to gain new skills. But really, your career is more fluid. So this is giving people opportunities to work in more meaningful ways and experiment with their careers. And again, this is something, again, bringing it back to millennials and new grads, this is something that they're telling us that is extremely important to them. They want mentorship. They want to know what they can achieve in an organization, but they want to also know that they don't have to follow a path, that they can try many different things before they get into, maybe the role that they're looking at in the future. I mentioned talent acquisition. So again, the technology there is improving, increasing, helping organizations source, and again, taking out a lot of the bias in recruitment. So this has been a challenge for many organizations and for all organizations over the years, is how do you remove some of that bias when you're looking to add new talent into your organization? And again, systems are doing things such as removing names and certain aspects on resumes now, so you can take that out. So when you receive a resume as a manager or a hiring manager, you're no longer looking at those type of things that, again, are inherently causing bias within organizations. All right, so employee experience, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just employee engagement. So again, we're seeing a real big difference in how companies are managing and monitoring how employees are engaged at work. So big shift away from the annual employment satisfaction survey, right? So we're seeing more and more more and more organizations using pulse surveys. So weekly check-ins or biweekly check-ins with their employees to get trends, to see, was it a bad day that day when they filled out the annual survey? Did they just have a bad experience that day? So now we're seeing them using these pulse checks, which are shorter, easier to analyze because you have continuous data, and again, it's adding into, or it's enhancing an organization's ability to really differentiate their employee experience by taking the results of those pulse surveys and being able to implement and make changes, again, as opposed to just being an annual process. So organizations are using design thinking as part of their crafting their employee experience. And again, overall, the employee experience is being looked at really, again, from when you're a candidate right till the time that you leave the organization and even after. So organizations are looking at their alumni more and more to help kind of enhance, again, the employee experience. As I mentioned earlier as well, the tools that organizations are providing to employees to do their work more effectively and efficiently are providing better employee experiences. And overall, this again, I think this trend, we'll see it even higher next year in our survey. Okay, so performance management, I think we touched on just in the introduction there, but maybe just a little bit more on agile goal management. So again, the kind of twice a year or once a year performance reviews are shifting more towards goals, aligning with goals, checking in on those goals, and really giving continuous feedback. And there's some great technology tools out there that can help enhance and support that. But we do feel that this area, there is a lot of improvement that can be made in the technology to be able to support those type of performance management programs. So it's really shifted from talking about people to talking with people and having more open conversations. So some would say, even when you had an annual review or twice a year review, you would still try to have open conversations, but having open conversations more often and more regularly are, again, allowing employees to feel more that they're trusting more in the process and trusting more in their management and in the organization.